My best friend convinced me she was being abused by her stepdad, so I supported her for months. When I found out she was lying about everything, she got the whole school to turn on me until her past victims started exposing years of her lies. A-Wife was my best friend for a month straight. She was loud, funny, and her mom was the best. Whenever I left school, A-Wife's mom would always wave at me while smiling. It was a really good feeling because my parents were workaholics who were basically absent in my life. So even though A-Wife was known for not being able to hold down a friend for longer than a month, I loved her. All our clothes were free reign for each other, and all her enemies were mine too. So that's how I met the most deranged girl I'd ever encountered, called Mia. A-Wife didn't give me much detail, just told me Mia was a beach, so that was enough for me. Soon we were making fake accounts on Instagram and messaging asking to be her friend. At first it was really funny. She had no idea it was me, and she was even FaceTiming A-Wife about how weird Holly, the fake account, was. It wasn't long before Mia figured it out and blocked us both, lol. So 2 weeks later, I found out why I was A-Wife's only friend. We were on a school trip when she spread rumors about me for literally no reason. She said I had tried to kiss every boy in the class, but they had all rejected me. I should have seen it coming, but 14-year-old me was so naive. So instead of getting revenge, I got depressed. That whole summer was the worst period of my life. I could barely get out of bed in the morning, and my only joy was found in making those mood boards on Tumblr. During that time is when I somehow started talking to Mia. We had just one thing in common: we both hated A-Wife. We'd literally text almost every day just to talk poop about her, and it was invigorating every single time. So after 2 years of constant gossiping, I finally took the train to see her. The first thing I noticed was that she looked nothing like her Instagram. Not even trying to be mean, I genuinely didn't know it was her when she opened the door, but I looked past it because I knew what it felt like to be insecure as heck. Mia was the one who got me into cigarettes, and whenever we met up, we would play GTA or talk about our poopy exes together. We were the stereotypical 16-year-old duo, until the virus hit. Every day she was posting on her Snapchat private story about how her stepdad was obsessed with her, how he was always texting her inappropriate things when her mom wasn't home, how he would buy her gifts that were obviously romantic. It worried me a lot, and we'd even have calls where I tried to convince her to tell her mom, where I tried to tell her that this wasn't normal and she needed help. I even sent her those support hotline numbers to encourage her to report him. Meanwhile, I was going through the worst time of my life. My granddad had suddenly passed, and I was so depressed that I could barely function without feeling extreme anxiety attacks. But whenever I tried to talk about myself, she would either leave me undelivered or shift the conversation back to her stepdad drama. So I just let myself be her therapist, because it was better than being alone. But then I noticed the cracks in her story. She claimed her stepdad was always texting her, but then posted stories hanging out with friends during those exact times. She said he wouldn't leave her alone, but also complained he completely ignores her when she asks for money. The breaking point was when she posted Snapchats from fancy restaurants with captions like dinner date with heart emojis, implying it was her stepdad. But I was just a 16-year-old who wanted to believe my friends could do no wrong, so I never questioned her. And that's when our friendship ended over a pair of AirPods. You see, my friend Liam had gone to Mia's house with me before the virus and left his AirPods behind. So by this point, months later, he was practically itching for them back. He even offered to stand outside her house and she could throw it outside her bedroom window. And when Mia refused with the excuse of being too busy, even I started getting suspicious. And Liam was the opposite of me. He was assertive and not afraid to step on people's toes. So one day, he asked me if I could go to her house with him to get the AirPods. At this point, he was the only one who didn't treat me like a piece of poop stuck on the bottom of their shoe, so I caved. On the way there, I texted Mia saying me and Liam were coming to collect the AirPods. Suddenly, my phone was buzzing with a wall of excuses. I'm at my aunt's house. My bedroom door is locked from the outside. Leave me alone, were all messages she actually sent. I started crying and begging Liam to turn back and get them another time, but he wasn't budging. That's how he ended up at Mia's front door, where her mom answered looking exhausted. While Liam went upstairs, her mom pulled me aside. "You're her friend who's been so worried?" she asked. Then she showed me her phone. Screenshots of Mia's texts to her 22-year-old boyfriend, talking about their dinner dates and the jewelry he bought her. Family therapy session notes documenting Mia's pattern of false accusations whenever her stepdad enforced basic rules. Security camera footage showing the stepdad wasn't even home during the times Mia claimed he was harassing her. "We've tried everything," her mom said, tears in her eyes. "She's destroyed our family with these lies." That's when I finally realized she was a lying beach, and I blocked her. But the next day, I was once again faced with the reality of how naive I truly was. Because unlike A-Wife, Mia wasn't going down without a fight. She told everyone I was silencing a victim and taking her abuser's side. And soon my life was turned upside down. The messages started flooding in within minutes. My Instagram exploded with DMs from people I hadn't talked to in months. Each notification made my stomach drop further. I watched the follower count on my main account plummet as people unfollowed me in real time. My hands shook as I scrolled through Mia's latest story post, a black screen with white text claiming I had chosen to protect an abuser over a victim. I threw my phone across my bed and buried my face in my pillow. The familiar weight of anxiety pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I could hear my mom vacuuming downstairs, completely oblivious to my world falling apart. My dad was probably still at the office, where he practically lived these days. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I grabbed it, ready to turn it off completely, when I saw Liam's name pop up. He'd sent me screenshots of what people were saying in various group chats. The messages ranged from disappointed to outright hostile. People who had never even met Mia were calling me a victim blamer and worse. I sat up and wiped my eyes, trying to think clearly. My first instinct was to defend myself, to explain what really happened. I opened opened Instagram and started typing out a story post, but my fingers froze over the keyboard. What could I even say? That Mia's own mother had shown me evidence? That would just make me look worse, like I was attacking her family. Instead, I closed the app and opened my messages with Liam. He was already typing when I got there. His message popped up saying he was coming over. I didn't even have the energy to respond. 20 minutes later, I heard the doorbell ring. My mom answered it, and I could hear her cheerful voice greeting Liam. She always liked him, probably because he was one of the few friends who actually acknowledged her existence when he came over. I listened to his footsteps on the stairs, each one making my anxiety spike higher. He knocked once before pushing my door open. I must have looked pathetic, sitting there in my oversized hoodie with puffy eyes and messy hair. He sat down next to me on the bed without saying anything at first. After a moment, he pulled out his phone and showed me more screenshots. Mia had posted on every platform we shared, crafting a narrative where I had gone to her house to confront her about her trauma. She claimed I had brought Liam as intimidation, that we had forced our way in and harassed her mother into lying about her. I felt sick reading it. The way she twisted every detail was almost impressive in its creativity. The AirPods weren't even mentioned. According to her version, we had shown up randomly to silence her. Liam took his phone back and leaned against my wall. He looked tired too, and I realized this was affecting him as well. Some of the messages in the group chats had called him out for enabling me. I pulled my knees up to my chest and tried to process everything. In less than 24 hours, I had gone from trying to support someone I thought was being abused to being labeled as an abuse enabler myself. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it didn't make it hurt any less. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from someone in my English class, asking if what Mia was saying was true. I didn't respond. Another buzz. Someone else, this time from my art class, sending me a long paragraph about how disappointed they were in me. I turned my phone face down and focused on my breathing. In through my nose, out through my mouth. The technique my school counselor had taught me for anxiety attacks. It barely helped. Liam stayed for another hour, mostly just sitting there in comfortable silence. Before he left, he told me not to respond to anything yet, to let things cool down first. Easy for him to say when he wasn't the main target. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined walking into school the next day. Would people confront me? Would they just whisper behind my back? Would my teachers have heard about it? The thoughts spiraled until I gave up on sleep entirely. I spent the early morning hours doing what I always did when I couldn't sleep, scrolling through Tumblr and making mood boards. It was mindless and comforting, arranging images that captured feelings I couldn't put into words. I made one that was all dark blues and grays, rain on windows and empty streets. It felt appropriate. By 6 a.m., I had made the decision to check Mia's social media one more time. Big mistake. She had posted a series of text screenshots, supposedly showing conversations with her stepdad. They were clearly fake. The contact wasn't even saved as a real name, just SD. But people were eating it up, commenting with heart emojis and messages of support. I noticed something else too. A wife had liked every single post. Of course she had. She was probably thrilled to see me getting dragged through the mud. I wondered if they had reconnected over their mutual hatred of me. School was in 2 hours. The thought of facing everyone made me physically nauseous. I considered faking sick, but my parents would never buy it. They barely noticed when I was actually sick, let alone when I was faking it. I dragged myself to the shower, hoping the hot water would wash away some of the dread. It didn't. I stood there until the water ran cold, then got dressed in my most inconspicuous outfit. Black jeans, black hoodie. The goal was to blend into the background as much as possible. Breakfast was a granola bar that I could barely choke down. My mom was already gone, and my dad was on a conference call in his office. The house felt emptier than usual. The walk to school was torture. Every person I passed felt like they were staring at me, even though logically I knew they probably had no idea who I was. My phone stayed in my pocket, on silent. I couldn't handle any more notifications. I made it to first period without running into anyone I knew well. Small mercies. But as soon as I sat down, I could feel eyes on me. 2 girls in the corner were whispering and glancing my way. My face burned. The teacher started class, and I tried to focus on the lesson. Something about the Revolutionary War. The irony of learning about conflicts from centuries ago while dealing with my own personal war wasn't lost on me. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Against my better judgment, I checked it under my desk. It was Liam, telling me Mia had shown up to school wearing expensive jewelry and claiming her stepdad had bought it as an apology. The same jewelry her mom had told me was from her adult boyfriend. I shoved my phone back in my pocket and tried to take notes, but my hands were shaking too badly. The girl next to me noticed and scooted her desk slightly away. Great. The bell rang for second period, and I practically ran to my next class. In the hallway, I caught snippets of conversation. Mia's name came up multiple times. So did mine, usually followed by disgusted sounds or disbelieving laughs. I made it through second and third period by keeping my head down and not making eye contact with anyone. Lunch was going to be the real test. The cafeteria was where all the social dynamics played out, where rumors spread like wildfire. I considered hiding in the library, but that felt like admitting defeat. Plus, Liam had texted saying he'd save me a seat at our usual table. At least I wouldn't be completely alone. The cafeteria was buzzing with conversation when I walked in. For a paranoid moment, I thought everyone stopped talking to stare at me, but that was just my anxiety talking. Most people were too absorbed in their own dramas to care about mine. I spotted Liam at our table in the corner. He had his earbuds in, scrolling through his phone. The seat across from him was empty, saved for me. I sat down without getting food, my appetite completely gone. That's when I saw her. Mia was holding court at a table in the center of the cafeteria, surrounded by people I recognized but had never been close to. She was gesturing dramatically, no doubt retelling her version of yesterday's events. Every few seconds, someone would gasp or shake their head sympathetically. I forced myself to look away. Getting into a confrontation here would only make things worse, but as I turned turned back to Liam, I caught Mia's eye. She smirked, a quick flash of triumph that made my blood boil. The rest of lunch passed in a blur. Liam tried to distract me with random videos on his phone, but I couldn't focus. Every laugh from Mia's table felt directed at me. Every whispered conversation felt like it was about me. When the bell finally rang, I was the first one out of the cafeteria. I had PE next, which meant changing in the locker room with a bunch of other girls. The thought made me want to skip, but I'd already been marked late too many times this semester. The locker room was exactly as awkward as I'd feared. Conversations stopped when I walked in. Girls who usually ignored me suddenly found reasons to move to different sections to change. I kept my eyes on my locker and changed as quickly as possible. PE itself was marginally better. We were running laps, which meant no partner work or team activities. I could just put in my earbuds and zone out. Well, that was the plan until someone accidentally bumped into me hard enough to send me stumbling. I looked up to see one of Mia's newer friends jogging away without an apology. Message received. The final bell couldn't come fast enough. When it finally rang, I practically sprinted to my locker. I just wanted to get home and hide in my room until this all blew over, if it ever blew over. But as I turned the corner, I saw a group gathered around my locker. My heart sank. As I got closer, I could see why. Someone had taped printed screenshots of Mia's posts all over my locker door. "Victim blamer" was written across them in red marker. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. People were watching, some with their phones out, probably hoping to catch my reaction for their stories. I forced myself to walk forward, to act like it didn't bother me. My hands shook as I spun my combination. The papers crinkled as I opened the door. I grabbed my books quickly, shoving them into my backpack without looking at anyone. As I closed my locker, some of the papers fell to the floor. I left them there. The walk home felt endless. My phone buzzed constantly, but I didn't check it. I couldn't handle any more today. When I finally made it to my front door, I felt like I might collapse from the emotional exhaustion. My mom was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming while she prepared dinner. She glanced at me briefly before returning to chopping vegetables. I mumbled something about homework and headed straight to my room, grateful she didn't notice my red eyes or shaking hands. The moment my bedroom door closed, I collapsed onto my bed. My phone continued its relentless buzzing. I finally checked it and found over 50 new notifications. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, even Facebook messages from people I hadn't spoken to since middle school. The digital mob had found me everywhere. I scrolled through some of the messages, each one making my stomach churn worse. Former classmates expressed their disappointment. People I'd considered friends demanded explanations. Complete strangers hurled accusations based solely on Mia's posts. The worst were the voice messages I couldn't bring myself to play. My laptop sat open on my desk, and I noticed several email notifications. Even my school email was flooded with messages. I closed it immediately, not ready to face whatever waited there. Around 7, my dad knocked on my door. He poked his head in to announce dinner was ready. I told him I wasn't hungry, and he shrugged before leaving. Neither of my parents pushed when I said I wasn't hungry. They never did. I spent the evening alternating between trying to distract myself and obsessively checking Mia's social media. She had posted 3 more times since school ended. Each post was more dramatic than the last, painting herself as a brave survivor standing up against those who would silence her. The comment sections were echo chambers of support and outrage directed at me. Liam texted around 9 to check on me. He mentioned that people had been asking him about what really happened at Mia's house. He'd tried explaining the truth, but most people dismissed him as biased since he was my friend. Some even accused him of being manipulated by me. I barely slept again that night. Every time I started to drift off, I'd remember another detail from the day or imagine what tomorrow would bring. By morning, I had deep circles under my eyes and felt physically ill from exhaustion and stress. The next day at school was worse. Word had spread overnight, and it seemed like everyone had picked a side. Most had picked Mia's. I walked through the hallways feeling like a pariah, catching fragments of conversations that stopped abruptly when people noticed me. In my first period class, I found a note on my desk. Someone had written "abuse enabler" in thick black marker. I crumpled it up and threw it away, but not before several classmates saw it. A few snickered. Most just stared. During second period, things escalated. Mia had apparently spent the morning showing people evidence of her stepdad's behavior. She had printouts of text messages, though I recognized the same obviously fake ones from her social media. She also claimed to have recordings, though conveniently couldn't play them in public for privacy reasons. I learned this from overhearing 2 girls in my class discussing it. They spoke just loud enough for me to hear, shooting glances my way to make sure I was listening. One mentioned how brave Mia was for speaking out despite people trying to silence her. The other agreed, adding that some people were just jealous of the attention victims received. At lunch, I found Liam sitting alone again. He looked frustrated and tired. He told me he'd gotten into an argument with some guys from his soccer team who'd been talking about the situation. They'd called me names, and Liam had defended me, which led to them questioning his judgment. I felt terrible that my drama was affecting him. I told him he didn't have to sit with me or defend me anymore. He rolled his eyes and told me to stop being stupid. We were friends, and friends stuck together. His loyalty made me want to cry. Mia entered the cafeteria with an even larger group than yesterday. She wore new jewelry, probably more gifts from her actual boyfriend that she'd attribute to her stepdad. Her followers hung on her every word as she spoke animatedly, occasionally glancing in my direction with satisfaction. After lunch, I had history class with both Mia and several of her supporters. I tried to sit in the back corner, but the teacher had assigned seats, and mine was right in the middle of the room. I felt exposed and vulnerable. Halfway through class, Mia raised her hand and asked to go to the counselor's office. She made a show of looking distressed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The teacher immediately agreed, looking concerned. As she passed my desk, she dropped a folded piece of paper. I didn't want to open it, but curiosity won. Inside, she'd written, "This is what happens when you choose the wrong side. It's only only going to get worse. My hands trembled as I shoved the note into my backpack. The girl next to me had seen the exchange and was already texting under her desk, probably spreading news of Mia's latest harassment by her abuser's defender. The rest of the day blurred together. More stares, more whispers, more isolation. Even teachers looked at me differently, though I couldn't tell if they'd heard the rumors or were just responding to my obviously distressed state. After school, I decided to walk the long way home to avoid running into anyone. As I passed the park where Mia and I used to hang out and smoke, I felt a wave of anger replace the anxiety and sadness. How could she do this? We'd been friends. I'd supported her through what I thought was real trauma. When I got home, I found my mom in the living room, which was unusual for a weekday afternoon. She was on her laptop but closed it when she saw me. For the first time in recent memory, she really looked at me. She asked if everything was okay at school. I almost laughed at the timing. After years of being too busy to notice my life, she chose now to pay attention. I told her everything was fine and escaped to my room before she could ask more questions. That evening, I made a decision. I couldn't keep playing defense while Mia controlled the narrative. I needed to do something, though I wasn't sure what. I started by creating a document on my laptop, writing down everything I remembered about Mia's lies and inconsistencies. I included dates and times when her stories didn't add up. I noted the posts about fancy dinners that she'd implied were with her stepdad, but were clearly with her boyfriend. I remembered conversations where she'd contradicted herself about her stepdad's behavior. As I typed, I realized there was a pattern. Mia's accusations always intensified when she wanted something or felt ignored. When her mom had grounded her for staying out late, suddenly her stepdad was stalking her. When she needed money for concert tickets, he was bribing her with gifts. I thought about sharing this document, but I knew how it would look. Mia had already painted me as someone who'd attack a victim. Any evidence I presented would be seen as further harassment. Liam texted me that night with news. He'd been talking to Theodore, a guy from our grade who'd dated Mia briefly freshman year. Theo had mentioned that Mia had pulled similar stunts with him, accusing him of various things when he'd tried to break up with her. She'd eventually moved on to a new target, but not before making his life miserable for months. This gave me hope. If others had experienced Mia's lies, maybe they'd speak up. I asked Liam to see if Theo would be willing to talk to me. The next morning, I woke up to find my Instagram account had been reported and temporarily suspended. The reason cited was harassment and bullying. I knew immediately who was behind it. Without Instagram, I couldn't even see what new lies Mia was spreading. School that day brought fresh humiliation. Someone had printed out one of Mia's posts, the one calling me an abuse enabler, and made copies. They were tucked into lockers, left on desks, and even taped to bathroom stalls. Everywhere I went, I saw my name associated with protecting an abuser. During PE, we played volleyball, and I was picked last, which never happened. My teammates actively avoided passing to me, and when I served, someone on the other team shouted that abuser supporters shouldn't be allowed to play. The gym teacher either didn't hear or chose to ignore it. At lunch, Liam had news. Theo had agreed to meet with us after school. He also mentioned that he knew of at least 2 other people who'd had similar experiences with Mia. My heart raced with possibility. Maybe I could turn this around. The meeting with Theo took place at a coffee shop downtown. He looked nervous but determined. He told us about his relationship with Mia 2 years ago. At first, she'd been sweet and fun, but when he'd wanted to spend time with his friends or focus on basketball, she'd become possessive and manipulative. The breaking point came when he tried to end things. She'd told everyone he'd been emotionally abusive, that he'd controlled her and made her feel worthless. Sound familiar? The accusations had affected his reputation for months until people gradually realized Mia had moved on to a new target and forgotten about him entirely. Theo gave me the names of 2 other people, Beatrice, who'd been Mia's best friend in middle school, and another girl named Bea, who'd known Mia from summer camp. Both had stories about Mia's pattern of lying and manipulation. I spent that evening reaching out to Beatrice and Bea. Beatrice responded quickly, eager to share her experience. She told me how Mia had spread rumors about her when she'd gotten the lead in the school play that Mia wanted. The rumors were so vicious that Beatrice had ended up switching schools. Bea's story was even more disturbing. At summer camp, Mia had accused a counselor of inappropriate behavior when he'd given her a warning about breaking curfew. The accusation had nearly ruined the young man's career before other campers came forward to say Mia had been lying. Armed with this information, I felt a spark of hope, but I also felt overwhelmed. How could I use these stories without seeming like I was attacking a victim? The narrative Mia had created was powerful, and I was already cast as the villain. Liam suggested we start small. Instead of making public accusations, we could privately reach out to people who seemed to be on the fence about the situation. We could share what we'd learned and let them draw their own conclusions. Over the next few days, I watched Mia's campaign against me intensify. She started a hashtag about believing survivors and tagged me in posts about the damage of victim blaming. Her followers shared these posts widely, and soon people from other schools were weighing in. My parents finally noticed something was wrong when the school called about my situation. They sat me down for a family meeting where I explained everything. My mom looked horrified, my dad confused. They offered to call the school or Mia's parents, but I begged them not to. Adult intervention would only make me look worse. Meanwhile, Liam and I quietly built our case. Beatrice had saved old text messages from Mia that showed her planning to spread lies about her. Theo had witnesses who remembered Mia changing her story multiple times. Bea had contact information for the camp counselor Mia had falsely accused. We created a shared document with all the evidence, careful to stick to facts and avoid emotional language. We didn't want to stoop to Mia's level of manipulation. The turning point came unexpectedly. Mia, emboldened by the support she was receiving, made a mistake. She posted a lengthy story about how her stepdad had bought her a new laptop to keep her quiet. She showed off the expensive device, claiming it was another example of his inappropriate gifts. But Beatrice recognized the laptop. She'd been with with Mia when she'd bought it herself using money from her part-time job. Beatrice had even helped her pick it out. She had photos from that shopping trip, complete with timestamps and location tags. Beatrice decided she'd had enough. She posted the photos on her own social media with a simple caption, "Interesting how this gift from her stepdad was actually bought at Best Buy with her own money. I was there." The post gained traction quickly. People who'd blindly supported Mia began asking questions. Some pointed out other inconsistencies they'd noticed but hadn't wanted to mention before. Mia tried damage control. She claimed Beatrice was lying, that I'd manipulated her into attacking a victim, but Beatrice had receipts. Literally. She posted more evidence of Mia's lies from their friendship, careful to focus on provable facts rather than accusations. Theo followed suit, sharing his story about Mia's false accusations against him. He included screenshots of messages where Mia had admitted to lying, but justified it by saying he'd hurt her feelings by wanting to break up. The tide began to turn. People started questioning Mia's other claims. Someone pointed out that her stepdad couldn't have been texting her during school hours as she'd claimed because he worked in a secure facility where phones weren't allowed. Another person noticed that the jewelry Mia claimed was from her stepdad appeared in her boyfriend's Instagram posts with captions about "spoiling my girl." Mia's response was to double down. She accused me of orchestrating a smear campaign against her. She claimed I'd threatened these people into lying. She posted increasingly dramatic stories about her trauma, but they were starting to sound desperate rather than convincing. Some of her supporters began distancing themselves. They didn't necessarily apologize to me, but they stopped actively participating in the harassment. The printed posts disappeared from school. The whispers died down. But Mia wasn't done. She showed up at my house one evening, banging on the door and demanding I call off my attack dogs. My parents were home, and my dad answered the door. I watched from the stairs as Mia put on a performance, crying about how I was ruining her life. My dad, who'd been briefed on the situation, calmly told her to leave. He said if she had concerns, she should address them through proper channels, not by showing up at our home. Mia left, but not before shouting that I'd regret this. The next day, she tried a new tactic. She claimed she was getting anonymous death threats because of my campaign against her. She posted screenshots of messages telling her to hurt herself, claiming they were from my supporters. But technology was not Mia's strong suit. Several tech-savvy students quickly pointed out that the messages were clearly fake. The timestamps didn't match up, the usernames were obviously created just for these messages, and the writing style was suspiciously similar to Mia's own. This was the final straw for many people. Creating fake death threats was too far, even for those who'd wanted to support a potential victim. The backlash was swift and harsh. Mia's core group of supporters dwindled to just a few people. Even they seemed uncomfortable with the lengths she was going to. Her social media posts became increasingly erratic, alternating between playing victim and lashing out at anyone who questioned her. I finally reactivated my Instagram account to find hundreds of messages. Many were apologies from people who'd believed Mia's lies. Others were from people sharing their own stories about Mia's manipulation. It turned out Theo, Beatrice, and B were just the tip of the iceberg. The school counselor called me in for a meeting. She'd been following the situation and wanted to check on my well-being. She also mentioned that Mia's parents had been in contact with the school about their daughter's behavior. Apparently, this wasn't the first time they'd dealt with Mia creating false narratives. I learned that Mia's mom had reached out to my parents to apologize. She shared more details about Mia's pattern of lying and manipulation, which had been going on for years. They'd tried therapy, but Mia had convinced several therapists that her parents were the problem. The woman I'd met that day at Mia's house, the one who'd shown me evidence of her daughter's lies, was at her wit's end. She'd watched Mia destroy relationship after relationship with her behavior, always playing the victim when confronted. As the truth spread, I expected to feel vindicated. Instead, I mostly felt sad. Sad for the friendship I'd thought was real. Sad for Mia, who seemed incapable of maintaining genuine relationships. Sad for all the people she'd hurt along the way. Liam remained my rock through everything. He never wavered in his support, even when it cost him socially. His loyalty meant more than any apology from fair-weather friends who'd turned on me so quickly. Some people tried to act like nothing had happened, wanting to return to normal without acknowledging their role in the harassment. I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. Mia eventually stopped coming to school regularly. When she did show up, she kept to herself, her previous confidence replaced by sullen silence. Her remaining friends seemed more like babysitters, keeping an eye on her rather than genuinely enjoying her company. I heard through the grapevine that her parents were considering switching her to a different school for a fresh start. Part of me hoped it would help her, that maybe she could learn from this and change. Another part doubted she was capable of real change. The experience taught me valuable lessons about the power of lies and the importance of truth. It also showed me who my real friends were, and the danger of mob mentality in the age of social media. As weeks passed, the drama died down. New scandals emerged to capture people's attention. I was no longer the girl who'd silenced a victim, but just another student trying to make it through high school. But the scars remained. I found myself more cautious about trusting people, more aware of red flags in friendships. I also developed a deeper empathy for anyone caught in the crossfire of false accusations, understanding how quickly public opinion could turn and how hard it was to defend yourself against emotional manipulation. Mia's story became a cautionary tale whispered about in hallways. New students would hear vague warnings about the girl who cried wolf too many times. Her legacy wasn't the sympathy she'd craved, but the wariness she'd earned. I sometimes wondered what drove Mia to such extremes. Was it a desperate need for attention? An inability to handle rejection or consequences? A genuine inability to distinguish between reality and her fabrications? I'd probably never know. What I did know was that I'd survived one of the worst experiences of my teenage life. I'd been tested and had found strength I didn't know I possessed. I'd learned the value of true friendship and the importance of standing up for truth, even when it seemed impossible. The mood boards I created during this time reflected my journey. They evolved from dark, anxious collections to ones featuring phoenixes, sunrise colors, and quotes about resilience. Each one marked a step in my healing process. My relationship with my parents improved slightly. The crisis had forced them to pay attention, and while they still worked too much, they made more effort to check in with me. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As junior year drew to a close, I felt ready to move forward. The drama with Mia would always be part of my story, but it wouldn't define me. I had plans for senior year, for college, for a life beyond the suffocating dynamics of high school social politics. The truth had set me free, but the journey to get there had been brutal. Still, I'd emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident in my ability to weather whatever storms life might bring. And that, more than any vindication, was the real victory. The summer heat made everything worse. I spent most days holed up in my room, refreshing social media to track the damage. Mia had created a new Instagram account after her main one got reported for harassment. She posted cryptic messages about fake friends and jealous haters trying to destroy her life. One afternoon, Beatrice texted me about a party happening that weekend. She mentioned Mia would definitely not be there since the host had explicitly uninvited her after learning the truth. I wasn't ready for parties yet, but I appreciated the gesture. Liam came over almost daily, bringing snacks and video games. We'd sit in my basement playing for hours without talking about the drama. His presence helped more than any words could have. My mom started working from home more often. She'd make excuses about needing a quieter environment, but I knew she was keeping an eye on me. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me with worried eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. 3 weeks into summer, I ran into Awif at the grocery store. She was with her mom, who waved at me with the same warm smile from years ago. Awif looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight and avoiding eye contact. Her mom chatted with me briefly about college plans while Awif stared at the floor. Later that night, Awif sent me a friend request on Instagram. I stared at it for 20 minutes before declining. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding. Theo organized a small gathering at his house for people who'd been affected by Mia's lies. It felt strange sitting in his living room with Beatrice, B, and 3 others I hadn't known about. We shared stories and compared notes on Mia's patterns. One girl showed us screenshots from 2 years ago that matched Mia's current tactics exactly. The meeting helped me realize I wasn't alone in this experience. Others had survived Mia's manipulation and moved on with their lives. It gave me hope that I could too. My dad surprised me by suggesting a weekend trip to the beach. Just the 3 of us, no work calls allowed. We spent 2 days building sandcastles and eating ice cream. My parents actually talked to me about things beyond grades and college applications. When we returned, I found my inbox flooded with messages. Someone had created an anonymous confession page for our school, and multiple people had submitted stories about Mia. The posts detailed lies, manipulation, and false accusations spanning years. Mia responded by threatening legal action against the page administrators. She posted screenshots of her messages to them, demanding they reveal who was slandering her. The page stayed up. I started volunteering at the local library to fill my days with something productive. The head librarian, Mrs. Chen, didn't know about the drama and treated me like any other volunteer. I spent hours organizing books and helping kids find stories, feeling useful for the first time in months. One day, while shelving returns, I spotted Mia's mom in the biography section. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she attempted a weak smile. We didn't speak, but she squeezed my shoulder gently before leaving. Liam got accepted to a competitive soccer camp for the rest of summer. I helped him pack, trying not to think about facing the remaining weeks without my main support system. He promised to text every day. With Liam gone, I spent more time with Beatrice. She introduced me to her friend group from her new school. They'd heard vague rumors about the situation, but didn't treat me differently. We spent afternoons at the mall or swimming at the community pool. The anonymous confession page kept growing. More people came forward with stories about Mia dating back to elementary school. Someone posted about how she'd faked an injury to get out of a test, complete with forged doctor's notes. Another shared how she'd stolen money from a fundraiser and blamed it on a classmate. Mia's attempts at damage control grew increasingly desperate. She created multiple fake accounts to defend herself in the comments, but her writing style was too distinctive to hide. People started screenshotting the obvious sock puppet accounts and mocking them. I ran into some classmates at a coffee shop downtown. They invited me to sit with them, acting like the past months hadn't happened. We talked about summer jobs and college plans. Nobody mentioned Mia. My anxiety attacks became less frequent. I still had bad days where I couldn't leave my room, but they were outnumbered by okay days and even some good ones. My mom noticed and stopped hovering as much. Beatrice convinced me to join her and her friends for a movie night. I almost canceled 3 times, but forced myself to go. We watched comedies and ate too much popcorn. I actually laughed without forcing it. The school email system sent out summer reading lists. Seeing official school communications made my stomach clench, remembering the flood of hate messages from months ago. I deleted it without reading and tried not to think about returning in the fall. Mia posted a lengthy video claiming she was being cyberbullied into silence. She cried on camera about how everyone had turned against her for speaking her truth. The video got more dislikes than likes, and the comment section turned into a catalog of her lies. Theo texted our group chat about seeing Mia at the mall with her mom. He said they were arguing in the food court, with Mia's mom looking frustrated and Mia storming off dramatically. We didn't respond, but it was clear her manipulations were affecting her home life too. I started journaling at my therapist's suggestion. Not the dramatic Dear Diary stuff, just stream of consciousness writing to process everything. Some days I wrote pages about anger and betrayal. Other days just a few lines about feeling okay. The library job gave me structure and purpose. Mrs. Chen started trusting me with more responsibilities, like running the children's children's reading hour. Kids didn't care about teenage drama. They just wanted someone to read them stories with funny voices. Beatrice and I grew closer over shared experiences. We'd text late into the night about everything except Mia. She understood the hypervigilance, the way I'd tense up when notifications came through, the relief when a day passed without incident. One evening, my mom found me making a new mood board. Instead of the dark themes from months ago, this one featured sunflowers and quotes about growth. She sat beside me and asked about each image. I actually explained instead of brushing her off. The anonymous confession page suddenly disappeared. Rumors swirled about whether Mia's threats had worked or if the administrators just got bored. Either way, the stories were already out there. The damage to her reputation was permanent. I bumped into one of Mia's former supporters at the grocery store. She apologized awkwardly, saying she'd realized the truth after Mia turned on her too. I accepted the apology but didn't offer friendship. Some people had shown their true colors too clearly. Liam sent photos from soccer camp, looking happy and exhausted. He'd made new friends who knew nothing about our drama. I felt genuinely happy for him, even while missing his presence. My dad started joining me for evening walks around the neighborhood. We didn't talk much, just walked side by side. Sometimes he'd point out houses for sale or comment on someone's garden. It was nice. Beatrice invited me to her family's barbecue. Her parents knew about the Mia situation but didn't bring it up. They treated me like any other teenager, complaining about music volume and reminding us to reapply sunscreen. I finally felt ready to update my social media profiles. I posted a simple photo of the sunset from my bedroom window. No caption, no explanation, just moving forward. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. People I hadn't heard from in months liked and commented with hearts and supportive messages. Even some who'd believed Mia initially reached out privately to apologize. Summer was ending, and with it came anxiety about returning to school. Would Mia be there? Would people still whisper? Would teachers look at me differently? The questions kept me up at night. Beatrice suggested we go school supply shopping together. We spent hours picking out notebooks and pens, pretending to be excited about fresh starts. She helped me pick out a new backpack, symbolic of leaving the old drama behind. 2 weeks before school started, news broke that Mia had transferred to a private school 2 towns over. Her parents had apparently decided a fresh start was necessary. Relief flooded through me so intensely I had to sit down. The group chat with Theo, Beatrice, B, and the others became less about Mia and more about normal teenage stuff. We made plans to hang out before school started, comparing schedules and complaining about summer assignments. I finally responded to some of the apology messages I'd received. Not all of them, but the ones that seemed genuine. I kept responses short and didn't offer to rekindle friendships. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. My last therapy session before school focused on coping strategies for returning. We role-played different scenarios, from running into Mia's remaining supporters to dealing with new students who might have heard rumors. I left feeling prepared, if not confident. Liam returned from camp the week before school. He looked taller somehow, more confident. He told me stories about his summer while we sat in my backyard. When he asked how I was really doing, I could honestly say better. The night before school started, I couldn't sleep, but instead of anxiety spirals, I spent the time organizing my room and preparing my outfit. I wanted to walk in feeling put together, even if I was shaking inside. My mom made a big breakfast on the first day, despite my protests that I wasn't hungry. She hugged me longer than usual before I left. My dad had already left for work, but had left a note in my backpack wishing me luck. Walking into school felt surreal. Same hallways, same lockers, but everything felt different. I kept my head up and walked to my locker without incident. A few people nodded or smiled. Most were too focused on their own first day nerves to care about old drama. In first period, I sat next to a girl I'd never talked to before. She complimented my backpack and asked about my summer. We chatted until class started. No mention of Mia or the drama, just normal teenage conversation. Lunch with Liam and Beatrice felt almost normal. We claimed a new table, far from where I used to sit and even farther from Mia's old spot. Other people joined us throughout lunch, creating a new configuration of friendships. By the end of the first week, I'd established new routines, different routes between classes, new study spots, fresh social circles. Some people still whispered, but it felt more like old gossip than active harassment. The mood boards I created now featured bright colors and hopeful quotes. My Tumblr followers commented on the change, sending supportive messages about growth and healing. Some shared their own stories of surviving social manipulation. 3 weeks into school, I heard Mia's name for the first time in days. Someone mentioned seeing her at a football game at her new school, alone and looking miserable. I felt a twinge of something, not quite sympathy, but not satisfaction either, just sadness for the person she could have been. My grades improved as I focused on academics instead of drama. Teachers who'd witnessed the worst of the harassment seemed relieved to see me participating again. My English teacher even pulled me aside to say she was proud of how I'd handled everything. Beatrice and I started a study group that grew to include new friends who hadn't been around for the drama. We met weekly at the library, where Mrs. Chen would sneak us cookies and remind us to keep the volume down. The 1-year anniversary of meeting Mia passed without fanfare. I only realized the date had passed when I was updating my calendar. What had once been a significant friendship milestone now felt like ancient history. Senior year applications started, and with them came essays about overcoming challenges. I wrote about resilience and the importance of truth, careful not to make it a revenge piece. My counselor said it was one of the strongest essays she'd read. Looking at acceptance letters months later, I realized how much had changed. The girl who'd hidden in her room making dark mood boards had somehow become someone who could write confidently about growth and perseverance. Graduation day arrived with its mix of excitement and nostalgia. A wife was there, of course, but we existed in parallel worlds. A polite nod was all that passed between us. Her mom still waved at me, and I waved back. As I walked across the stage, I spotted my parents in the crowd, both having taken time off work to be there. Liam cheered embarrassingly loud from the graduate section, Beatrice caught my eye and winked. The girl who'd tried to destroy me wasn't there to see my triumph, but it wasn't about her anymore. It was about surviving, learning, and building something better from the wreckage. High school was ending, but I was just beginning. That summer felt different from all the others. Instead of hiding from the world, I embraced it. College orientation, new city apartment hunting, goodbye parties with the real friends who'd emerged from the chaos. The future stretched ahead, unmarked by past drama. The last mood board I made before leaving for college featured a phoenix. Not because I'd risen from ashes in some dramatic transformation, but because I'd learned to build something new while carrying the lessons of the old. Some scars remained, but they no longer defined me.